Hello and welcome to this edition of FiTV. I'm your host, Brad Swanson, and we are coming to you the day before the end of the 2021 Florida legislative session. We are joined today by none other than Speaker Designate Paul Renner. And Speaker, thank you for joining us on the program.
It's great to be with you, Brad.
Okay, it's been a crazy session. No lobbyists in the building, which you guys probably love, and but it's we've managed to get through this COVID protocols and whatnot. But the legislature didn't stop working. You guys have gotten a lot done. Tell us, what are your top 2 or 3 pieces of legislation that you've passed and that you're proud of?
Well, our number one obligation, our constitutional duty, is to pass a budget. We're debating that just today, and we'll pass it tomorrow. It's a balanced budget. We have a requirement to balance our budget, and so I think Floridians can be happy that we're not over here printing money for any need possible, but really prioritizing what the needs of the state are. So we've set aside money for reserves for rainy days such as hurricanes, and a trust fund that the governor can access if we have another hurricane or a global pandemic like we just went through with coronavirus, and also investing in infrastructure. So think of wastewater and stormwater facilities and making sure that we are providing the kind of infrastructure we need for the many people that are coming into our state.
Right. I mean, you've got people coming in droves. Now you get all these senators and House members together. You're going to go a little bit beyond your constitutional requirements. So what else have you been working on legislatively?
Well, we've talked a little bit about the threat of big tech, where people are actually having their voices silenced. And, I was in the military and fought so that people that disagree with everything I believe in have a right to speak. They have a right to have their voices heard. They have a right to their freedom of conscience. I have that right too. You have that right too. Everyone does. And so just because we disagree with each other doesn't mean that any entity, even a company like a Google or an Amazon or a Facebook or Twitter, has a right to deplatform you or take you off. And we've had that happen to our members just this year. A member that gave an interview on HB1, which says that we can speak loudly, we can shout loudly about our views, but we can't engage in political violence. And it was called the riot bill. Many called it the riot bill. Is an important piece of legislation. He did an interview, put it on YouTube. It was taken off because he disagreed with his perspective. That's not America. And so we've had a bill to address the threat of big tech and these algorithms that send you what they want you to see and not necessarily a full view of both sides of an issue.
And you think about it, the monopolies that they are. I mean, they're essentially tech nation states, if you will, with hundreds and hundreds of millions of subscribers. That they are the only game in town for so much of that public discourse, if you will. So, well, thank you guys for your leadership on that. Let's talk a little bit about HB1. We looked at the destruction across the country, and Governor DeSantis and the president and the speaker all stood up and said, hey, we believe in peaceful protest, but that's not peaceful protest. That's violence. That's political violence. So tell us a little bit about HB1 and how are Floridians now protected?
Yeah, well, it just makes sure that we have significant penalties if you burn businesses, if you attack police officers, if you're engaged in mob violence. And look, protest, even angry protest, oftentimes move this country forward and highlight areas where we need to do better. But political violence is never the answer. It is never okay. And that's what really separates our country from so many others. And so it's a strong statement in the state of Florida. We're not going to have political violence here. You can protest as much as you want and as loud as you want, and we're going to support you. But you can't engage in political violence.
All right. Well, let's turn our focus to what is one of Florida's number one assets, which is our nature, right? And you've worked personally on the wildlife corridor. Tell us what the legislature did this year on that.
Yes, several of our members have an interest in this area, and what's really about looking at Florida and making sure that we preserve kind of that interior of our state, which has still a lot of wildlife, a lot of benefit to our environment, both in making sure we have water supply and aquifer recharge, but also water quality. And so because so many people want to come into the state, we have to think thoughtfully about making sure we preserve a corridor, not only for wildlife, but for our farmers and ranchers, but also importantly for our environment. And a lot of that area that we're looking at overlays those environmental areas, the watersheds of the St. Johns, the Swanee, all the significant watersheds, the Everglades, obviously. And so thinking thoughtfully ahead, 10, 20, 30 years out, what's our state going to look like? And do we want to be all paved over? And I think most Floridians across the spectrum would say, no, we want to make sure we have the Florida we enjoy, the fishing, the hunting, all the outdoor activities,
Right.
boating, so forth. And to do that, we need to make sure we're conserving our environment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, those are three amazing pieces of legislation. Those are all on their way to the governor, I'm assuming?
Yeah, they are.
All right,
Yeah.
so that's a lot of work, but you still have 2 more days.
Two more
days to finish out this session, and you know the devil's always in the details of these last days to see what comes up that maybe got heard in a committee, and it's part of the law. We call this Amendment Palooza, you know,
Yeah.
in these last 2 days. So good luck to you, and thank you for coming on FiTV.
Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate you. Thanks,
All
Paul.
right, take care.
That's all the time we have for this episode of FiTV. For more great interviews like this one, make sure you hit us up on our social media feeds. And for now, thanks for tuning in.